Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I rise in strong support of H.R. 1541, the Common Sense in Compensation Act. I thank the gentleman from North Carolina for yielding me this time, and I also want to commend him for coming up with this very sensible, reasonable, moderate response in legislation to a problem that's been growing bigger and bigger with each passing year. As one previous speaker, the gentleman from Michigan, mentioned, in one recent 3-year period, there were over $340 million worth of federal bonuses given out. I didn't know about that figure, but I've seen some other figures which relate to this this legislation that I would like to mention at this time. A couple of years ago, the Commerce Department's Bureau of Economic Analysis completed a study showing that the average federal employee received a salary and benefits totaling $119,982, while the average private sector employee made a salary and benefits of $59,909. In other words, the federal salaries and benefits were approximately twice or double what people in the private sector were receiving. The Washington Examiner newspaper, in a lead editorial after that report came out, described these federal salaries as, quote, scandalously higher than private salaries, and added, quote, with the federal deficit and national debt heading into the stratosphere, taxpayers can no longer afford to support such lucrative government compensation. And certainly it's already been mentioned that our national debt is now approximately $17 trillion, a figure that almost no human being can really comprehend. At the height of the recession, there was a front page story in USA Today which said, quote, that quote, federal workers are enjoying an extraordinary boom time in pay and timing during a recession that has cost 7.3 million jobs in the private sector, unquote. And the report in USA Today said that, quote, the highest paid federal employees are doing best of all. I saw a report, read a report a few months ago that said of the six of the 10 wealthiest counties in this country were all suburban counties to Washington, D.C. In addition to much higher federal salaries and benefits, federal employees have the best pension plans in this country, while fewer than 20% of employees in the private sector even have any employer-provided pension plan other than Social Security. These very high pensions were started many years ago when federal salaries often were lower than in the private sector. But that is certainly not the case today when federal salaries are averaging about twice what the average salary is in the private sector. Also, federal employees are allowed to retire at younger ages. Almost everyone, Mr. Speaker, I realize feels underpaid when you hear about these obscene, ridiculous salaries of CEOs and athletes and movie stars. But federal employees need to realize that you're talking about just 1/10 of 1% of the people there, and compared to about 96 or 97% of the American people, federal employees are very fortunate to have their jobs and are very well paid. And I know from my experience with the Tennessee Valley Authority, where where they've given out bonuses, many bonuses in the hundreds of thousands of dollar range. That this situation will spiral completely out of control because big government can justify or rationalize all of things.
I'll yield 1 more minute. Gentleman's yielded 1 more minute.
Well, thank you, the gentleman. I don't really need that much time, but I will simply say that this is a good bill. This is good legislation to limit these bonuses to about 5% of these very high salaries, and I hope all of my colleagues will support H.R. 1541, the Common Sense in Compensation Act, and I yield back the balance of my time.